Most of us know the basic story of the Titanic. At 11:40 p.m. on April 14, 1912, the unsinkable ship struck an iceberg and vanished into the freezing Atlantic just 2.5 hours later. It's a tragedy that has haunted the world's imagination for over a century. But what if I told you that the story you know is only the beginning? Welcome back to Vintage Shots. Today, we are uncovering 16 incredible and mysterious facts about the RMS Titanic that you have probably never heard before. Are you ready? Let's dive deep into history. It is so easy to imagine the Titanic struggling against towering waves, thick fog, or heavy rain that hid the iceberg. But in reality, it was the exact opposite. As Titanic sailed toward its destiny, the weather was eerily calm, almost too perfect. There was no wind, no waves, and the Atlantic stretched out like a flawless obsidian mirror. The only ripples on the water came from the massive ship itself as it sliced through the deep. Tragically, this absolute stillness might have been its curse, making the iceberg nearly impossible to spot until it was far too late. Did you know that the Titanic was burning long before it ever hit the iceberg? A massive fire broke out in one of the coal bunkers just days before departure. Shockingly, the fire was still raging as the ship left for New York, creating a hidden, deadly danger beneath the unsuspecting passengers. Stokers struggled in vain to control the heat, whispering rumors that they would need fireboats to save the ship once they docked. But that help never came. The fire only stopped when the iceberg pierced the hull, letting the freezing Atlantic flood the bunkers. Captain Edward John Smith is often remembered as a hero who went down with his ship, even supposedly saving a child before vanishing. But the truth is far more complicated. His legacy is forever stained by critical failures that night. He ignored multiple ice warnings and allowed lifeboats to be launched half empty, wasting hundreds of life-saving seats. Even more shocking, this seasoned veteran actually failed his navigation test earlier in his career. His hesitation to order a clear evacuation left many passengers unaware of the danger until it was far too late. Did you know that a life-saving drill was actually scheduled for the Titanic on April 14th, the very day it struck the iceberg? This crucial exercise was meant to prepare the crew and passengers for an emergency, but for reasons that remain a mystery to this day, Captain Smith canceled the drill. Imagine the difference it could have made. Without that practice, the evacuation was filled with confusion and fear. Many historians believe that if that drill had taken place, many more lives could have been saved from the icy Atlantic. The Titanic tragedy is often blamed on a lack of lifeboats, but the real tragedy is how many of those seats were wasted. Even with only enough boats for a fraction of the passengers, most were lowered half empty. For example, lifeboat number 7, the first to leave, carried just 24 people despite having room for 65. But lifeboat number 1 was the most shocking case, carrying only 12 people into the dark, even though it could hold 40. Every empty seat in those tiny boats represented a life that could be saved. 37 seconds. That is all the time First Officer Murdoch had to save 2,000 lives once the iceberg was spotted. In those heart-pounding moments, he frantically ordered the ship to turn hard a starboard and the engines to reverse. The Titanic began a slow, desperate tilt to the left, but the massive vessel simply couldn't dodge the blow in time. Those few seconds became the bridge between a luxury voyage and a legendary disaster. If the alarm had come just half a minute earlier, history might be very different. Masabumi Hosono was the only Japanese passenger on the Titanic. As the ship sank, he was ready to die with dignity until a split-second decision changed his life forever. Seeing a spot in a lifeboat, he jumped to save himself, but back in Japan, his survival became his shame. He was branded a coward for not going down with the ship, losing his job and being ostracized for decades. It wasn't until 1997, long after his death, that a hidden diary proved he never stole a seat. The Titanic was essentially a floating city, equipped with its own daily newspaper. Known as the Atlantic Daily Bulletin, it was printed fresh every single day right on board. Passengers could stay connected with the latest international news, stock prices, and even horse racing results. It also featured social gossip and the highly anticipated daily menus. It was the ultimate symbol of sophistication, ensuring that even in the middle of the ocean, life for the wealthy felt perfectly normal, until the day the printing presses stopped forever. Despite its reputation for luxury, the Titanic held a shocking secret about hygiene. While we imagine the elite living in total comfort, the reality was that most passengers still had to share public bathrooms. In fact, only 2 of the most expensive suites on the entire ship featured their own private bathtubs. But for the third-class passengers, the situation was truly desperate. There were only 2 bathtubs provided for more than 700 people in steerage. True luxury was a privilege reserved for almost no one. Most people believe the Carpathia was the only ship nearby, but that is a tragic mistake. The SS Californian was actually much closer when the Titanic began to sink. At 12:45 a.m., its crew saw mysterious white flares lighting up the dark sky, Titanic's desperate cries for help. They even woke their captain to report the lights, but shockingly, no orders were ever given. Because their wireless operator had already gone to bed, the Californian remained unaware of the disaster miles away until it was far too late. In the frantic scramble for lifeboats, where seats were prioritized for women and children, something unexpected happened. Amid the heartbreak and lack of space, 2 tiny passengers managed to survive the freezing night. Out of the 9 dogs on board, only 2 made it to safety. A small Pomeranian and a Pekingese were carried onto lifeboats by their devoted owners. It's a staggering fact when you consider that hundreds of people were left behind. These small animals became some of the most unlikely survivors of history. When you look at the iconic silhouette of the Titanic, those 4 massive chimneys are impossible to miss. But here is a secret. One of them was a total fake. While the first 3 funnels released steam from the boilers, the 4th one was purely for show. Designers believed that a ship with 4 funnels looked more powerful and majestic. Ironically, this decorative addition had no actual function and even increased air resistance. It was a grand symbol of prestige that served no purpose other than to look impressive. Ever wonder what the RMS in Titanic stands for? It means Royal Mail Ship. Titanic was an official floating post office for the British government. 5 dedicated postal workers were responsible for 7 million pieces of mail packed into over 3,000 bags. Though the wreck sits 2 miles deep, a fascinating promise remains. Because most letters were headed for the States, the U.S. Postal Service has stated that if any mail is ever found, they will still try to deliver it. Talk about a long-distance delivery. On April 17, 1912, the Mackay Bennett was sent to recover the victims of the Titanic. The vessel carried 40 embalmers, tons of ice, and 100 coffins. Of the 306 bodies found, 116 were so severely damaged they had to be buried at sea. Eventually, 328 bodies were recovered by various ships, but 119 remained forever in the Atlantic due to the extent of their injuries. Crews worked tirelessly to identify everyone found, providing families with a final piece of a story that ended far too soon. Amidst the loss, meet Charles Joughin, the Titanic's chief baker. When the ship began its final descent, Joughin didn't succumb to panic. Instead, he decided it was the perfect time for a drink. He got so drunk that the alcohol in his system allegedly helped him survive the freezing Atlantic for hours. While others died of hypothermia within minutes, Joughin paddled in the sub-zero water until he was rescued at dawn. It remains one of the most bizarre survival tales in history. Just how much did it cost to sail on the Titanic? A top-tier first-class suite could cost up to £870, nearly $72,000 today, offering private decks and swimming pools. Second-class tickets averaged £13, providing access to private libraries. Meanwhile, the most affordable third-class tickets cost between £7 and £9, roughly $600 today. For many, this was a lifetime of savings, a heavy price to pay for a dream that would tragically vanish into the Atlantic. 16 stories, 16 heartbreaks, and 16 mysteries that prove the Titanic was more than just a ship. It was a mirror of humanity itself. Thank you for diving deep into history with us today. If these forgotten snapshots moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe to Vintage Shots. Your support helps us bring the shadows of the past back into the light. What historical mystery should we uncover next? Let us know in the comments below. Until next time, keep looking back to understand the future.